Because it ties everything together and helps with writing, most stories have a theme they're deliberately built around. JoJo as a whole is about how identity fights chaos, and the first 6 parts tell the story of a family fated to have dangers, but who each individually stand against them and make heroic choices. So Jojolands itself should have a main theme too. And since theme is something authors tend to include from the beginning for people to spot, I think chapter 1 already narrows it down. For starters, there's a lot of bleakness, where in every scene and setting established, there's the sense that the characters have given up trying to improve bad situations and accept these changeable circumstances as part of their daily lives. The chapter covers Jojo's regular routine so the audience knows what he goes through, and it's full of these bleak elements. The cops being awful, their victims being awful, a school Jojo doesn't care about but still goes to, COVID, and our main cast seeming to live hollow lives where the only activity they care about makes them miserable on some level because they know it hurts people. These details put in this introductory chapter all have the same tone, so I think Jojo's belief in mechanisms is meant to show that he really feels helpless, and that he wants to exploit them because he doesn't think he can change the stuff he dislikes about his life. But one detail that could contrast this bleakness is the setting, because part 9 takes place in Hawaii, and at least starts in Oahu, which is an awesome location. And Hawaii's strong atmosphere and scenery create a sense that's kind of the opposite of bleak. As a feeling, bleakness is empty and represents the emotional gap when something inevitable hasn't happened yet. It's at an angle to sadness, where something hopeful is beaten down with the fact that it's already been doomed. But this is counteracted in 2 ways by Hawaii's tropical coastal climate. First, with its weather, the gentle but powerful winds and rainstorms, because many plants at multiple heights have collections of long floppy leaves in the region, and when winds blow through these or the noticeable different shades of rain clouds, you can see the movement in abundant detail around you. So this excessive and continuous amount of detail churns out feeling. And second, those leaves and clouds act as cover, strikingly blocking out the details behind them, and creating a sense of mystery as to where the feelings can be placed. This calm hope of invisible wonder beyond obstruction could be the opposite of how Jojo feels about his life. And since it's there, in the backgrounds of those bleak scenes, the part might explore how Jojo learns to feel free, using Hawaii's natural environment with its refreshing wonder, and its cultural environment which has a lot of storytelling potential. Whether or not he's the protagonist, Jojo's story as a main character likely has clues for the theme, so we might be able to figure out more by looking at what the Jojos have represented in the past. In the first 6 parts, each Jojo was a role model, and what they fought for followed the themes of their parts. Part 4's Josuke was fine taking a backseat in his group, because the story was about cooperation in society, which was also why most antagonists were just living their daily lives as workers or in school, and why Kira, who rejected his chance to follow ground rules, was the cautionary tale. Part 5 Giorno fought to change his nation's authorities, because that story was about fighting systems of power stronger than individual people, rather than contributing to them. And Part 6 was about the weaknesses of those systems, as to be relevant to the world, they likely have to have human starting points, and in order to actually cause anything, they have to manifest or incarnate in some way, which was why we had Jolene and then Emporio. But once the first batch of Jojos ended, when Dio cheated their rivalry by outsourcing after his death the Pucci, so Jolene did the same with Emporio, they stopped being role models. Instead, parts 7 and 8 became about their characters learning something that would change them. Johnny wanted to physically recover, but learned to improve as a person as well, and Josuke thought knowledge about his past was what mattered more than anything, before realizing they were his meaningful relationships. So if Jodio follows this trend, his stance on mechanisms might change over time, and since he's starting with this awareness that deprives him of agency, the part might explore desensitization in some way. I don't think it's cool to try to predict more than that, even when it's just a guess, because whether or not they're true, if you have specific guesses and you're sharing them, people can still have their experiences affected. So I'm not going to talk about what I think the part's message could be, or any possible developments if they don't seem to be deliberately supported. At least until they're either disproven or in the rare case really happen. But I'm fine talking about what this part's moral lesson might be, because it also provides material and helps series get greenlit, but because general moral lessons are meant to be more identifiable early on, so people can learn them. So far, every JoJo's part has made some kind of moral statement in 3 areas of focus. Parts 1, 2, and 4 were meta about morals in general, parts 3, 5, and 6 paralleled them but about effort, and the last 2 parts have been about social awareness. Phantom Blood specifically argued that no matter how world-changing or perilous the situation, even when other people are turned into ghouls and monsters, you should stick to your morals. Then, Battle Tendency made the claim that morals should be values that can be applied adaptively, as opposed to restrictive sets of rules, and had Joseph interact with different threats and civilizations across the world in multiple ways. His surface traits were also way more dickish to say that morals should be more meaningful. And as the conclusion, Part 4 justified why people have morals in the first place. So after this, Stardust Crusaders introduced stands, and like Phantom Blood, a power system that represented and encouraged its ideology. In Stardust Crusaders' case though, this is about fighting spirit, and being as dedicated as possible to directly solving your problems to be the most effective you can. Golden Wind took this idea of dedication to problem solving and threw its characters against seemingly invisible forces, arguing that fighting spirit should be used adaptively because even if someone can't see a way out, they can only reach it by trying. Then like Part 4, Stone Ocean justifies this by saying that in order for an absolute force to not have already caused what you want to prevent, there have to be limits to how it applies to the world, and therefore those limits are weak points you have a hope in fighting. But the new universe only has 2 finished parts so far, with Steel Ball Run saying you should consider how your actions affect others, and Jojolian saying you should value the people in your life. So if there's another moral trilogy, and Jojolands also has a statement about social awareness, then it could be generally related to identifying others in some way, you know, with Jodio being desensitized and seeing everyone as helpless. I think it's also worth mentioning that Part 9 parallels Part 5, it's just that Jodio is more like Bruno and with a personality between Johnny and Diego, and is following Part 8, which it already resembles with the main character having a very intimidating stand. So whatever the theme is, I think whatever the moral lesson is, and Jojolands' similarities to those 2 previous parts will be major clues, maybe within the next couple chapters, and Chapter 2 should be out by the end of the week.